Right now, somewhere on Earth, someone is saying something you will never understand. Not because they're far away, not because the topic is complicated, but because the sounds coming out of their mouth follow rules your brain was never built to decode. There are over 7,000 languages spoken on this planet today, and every single one of them came from the same place. But the real answer to how that happened is far stranger than a family tree. Start with a simple question. If humans all descended from the same small population, how did we end up speaking thousands of mutually unintelligible languages? Somewhere, a single group of humans was speaking, just one language, one set of sounds that meant something to everyone around a fire. Then something happened. That single language became two. Those two became four. Those four became thousands. And you're left holding one tiny fragment of it, unable to speak to most of your own species without a translator standing between you. So when did the splitting begin? For a long time, scientists genuinely didn't know. Language doesn't fossilize. You can't dig up a sentence. Bones tell you when someone lived. Stones tell you what they built. But words vanish the moment they're spoken, unless someone happens to be listening. This is where a linguist named Quentin Atkinson enters the story. In 2011, Atkinson, working at the University of Auckland, published a study that tried to do something that sounded almost impossible. He wanted to trace language back to its origin point using math borrowed from population genetics. Here's the idea. When a small group of people splits off from a larger population and moves somewhere new, they carry only a fraction of the original group's genetic diversity. Scientists call this the founder effect. Populations get less diverse the farther they travel from their origin. Atkinson asked a strange question. What if language works the same way? He measured something called phonemic diversity, essentially how many distinct sounds a language uses. And when he mapped it across the globe, a pattern emerged. Languages in Africa use the most sounds. Languages spoken farther away, in places like South America and the Pacific Islands, used fewer. The pattern matched human migration almost perfectly. Atkinson's data pointed to language originating in Africa, likely somewhere between 50,000 and 70,000 years ago, spreading outward exactly like the humans who carried it. 50 to 70,000 years. Let that sit for a moment. That's not just before written history. That's before agriculture, before permanent settlements, before most of the tools you'd recognize as human technology. Somewhere in that window, language was already alive, already splitting, already becoming something different in every direction humans walked. But not every researcher agrees on the timeline. A linguist named Johanna Nichols at UC Berkeley approached the question from a completely different angle. Instead of counting sounds, Nichols studied how long it takes languages to diversify into distinct families, the kind of deep structural differences you see between, say, Mandarin and Spanish. Based on the sheer number of language families that exist today, Nichols argued the divergence must have started even earlier than Atkinson's estimate, possibly over 100,000 years ago. So you have two serious scientists using two different methods landing on two different numbers. And that disagreement isn't a failure. It's a signal. It means the true origin of language is old enough that it sits right at the edge of what any method can measure precisely. But here's a deeper question underneath all of this. Even if you know when language started spreading, how did it start at all? This is where a scientist named Svante Pääbo at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology changed the entire conversation. Pääbo's team studied a gene called FOXP2, sometimes nicknamed the language gene, though that name oversimplifies what it actually does. Mutations in FOXP2 are linked to severe problems with speech and grammar in humans. That much was already known. What Pääbo's team discovered was stranger. They found the same version of FOXP2 in Neanderthal DNA. Think about what that means. Neanderthals, a separate human species that split from our own lineage hundreds of thousands of years ago, may have carried at least part of the biological hardware for speech. This doesn't prove Neanderthals had full language the way you do, but it pushes the possibility of spoken communication back even further than researchers used to assume, deep into a period long before modern humans existed at all. So the story isn't a single moment where language switched on like a light. It's closer to a slow ignition, biological groundwork laid hundreds of thousands of years ago, then modern language emerging and spreading and fracturing across tens of thousands of years after that. And once it started spreading, it never stopped changing. Every time a group of humans separated from another group, Whether by mountains, oceans, deserts, or simply distance, their shared language started drifting. Sounds shifted, words changed meaning, grammar reorganized itself, generation after generation, without anyone deciding it should happen. Nobody sat down and invented Mandarin, or Spanish, or Zulu. Each language slowly grew apart from a shared ancestor, the same way cousins in a family tree grow more distant with every new branch. This is the part that tends to surprise people. Language isn't something ancient humans figured out once, and then preserved carefully, like a fire they had to protect. It's the opposite. Language is inherently unstable. It wants to drift. Every child who learns to speak from their parents introduces tiny variations, and over enough generations, tiny variations compound into something unrecognizable. Given enough time and enough separation, one language will always become many. It's not a bug in the system. It is the system. Which brings you back to where this started. You, right now, speaking one language out of thousands, unable to understand most of your own species without help. That might feel like a barrier, like something broken between humans that used to be whole. But look at it from a different angle. Every language on Earth, no matter how different it sounds, no matter how impossible it feels to translate, is a branch of the exact same tree. Somewhere back through 50, 70, maybe over 100,000 years of drifting, splitting, and reshaping, every language you've ever heard traces back to the same small group of humans, speaking around the same kind of fire, using a version of the same biological hardware Svante Pabo found traces of in Neanderthal bones. The differences you hear when someone speaks a language you don't understand aren't really differences at all. They're evidence. Evidence of an unbroken chain stretching back tens of thousands of years, still running through every human mouth on the planet, still splitting, still changing, still proving where you came from every single time you open yours. Right now, somewhere on Earth, someone is saying something you will never understand. But for the first time, maybe you understand exactly why.